I took on a roommate because Austin finally did what Austin always does. He smiled at me while taking more money out of my account every month. My lease renewal came in, I stared at the new number for a full minute, and then I opened a spreadsheet like that was somehow going to make me feel in control. Didn't. It just confirmed I either needed a second job, a cheaper place, or another person paying half the rent. I chose the third option because it sounded the least miserable. At that point I was 27 and living in a way that looked solid from the outside. I had a dependable job, a clean kitchen, bills paid on time, and exactly one framed print on my wall because anything more personal started to feel like a risk. A year earlier I'd been with someone who didn't leave in one loud scene. She just slowly stopped needing me, stopped looking at me like I was in the room, and then one day it was done. No big fight, no broken plates, just this quiet feeling that I'd somehow been edited out of my own life. After that, I made rules for myself without ever saying them out loud. Be easy. Be useful. Don't ask for much. Don't give anyone enough access to move things around inside you. It worked. Mostly. Then Mary answered my listing. She showed up on a Saturday afternoon in paint-flecked jeans, carrying an iced coffee and a folder like she was prepared for this to be a real interview. She had dark hair pulled up badly on purpose, like she'd done it with one hand while leaving somewhere in a hurry, and she looked around the apartment with this calm, direct focus that made me suddenly aware of every boring object I owned. "This light is actually great," she said, standing near the living room window. Nobody had ever said that about my apartment. I asked the normal questions. Job, schedule, guests, smoking, cleaning. She answered all of them clearly. She worked out of a ceramic studio and also taught beginner classes a few evenings a week. She liked quiet in the mornings, didn't leave dishes in the sink, and believed passive-aggressive texting should be illegal. That got my first real laugh out of the day. By the time she left, I already knew I was going to offer her the room. Not because of anything dramatic, just because the apartment felt less dead with her standing in it. A week later she moved in with boxes, 2 plants, 3 mismatched mugs, and more actual personality than the place had seen in months. Within 2 days there were sketches taped near her bedroom door, bowls drying on kitchen towels, and a small collection of strange lopsided clay pieces on the windowsill that somehow made the whole place feel more honest. I told myself I just liked having a good roommate. That explanation held for maybe 10 days. She started making coffee before I got out of my room, and after the second morning she asked, "You want some when I make mine? Or are you weird about beans?" "I don't think I'm weird about beans." She looked at me over her mug. That sounded like something a person weird about beans would say. After that, she made enough for both of us. Then dinners started happening by accident. One of us would be in the kitchen already, the other would wander in, and somehow we'd end up splitting roasted potatoes or pasta or tacos eaten standing at the counter because we were both too tired to sit down properly. Friday nights turned into 1 episode of something dumb, then 3. She liked terrible reality shows with complete seriousness. I liked making fun of them. She said that still counted as liking them. It got easy too fast. I learned that when she was concentrating, she tucked her lower lip in for a second without noticing. She learned I cleaned when I was stressed and would wipe down an already clean counter if I didn't know what else to do with myself. I helped her carry home a heavy bag of clay one evening, and she repaid me by fixing the sad little basil plant I'd almost killed on the sill. She left half a grilled cheese on a plate near my laptop once when I was buried in work. I replaced the batteries in her studio lamp without mentioning it. Tiny things. Nothing you could point to. Everything you could feel. Soon the apartment had its own rhythm. Her bare feet on the hallway floor. My mug beside hers in the sink. The sound of cabinets opening while one of us talked from the other room. Inside jokes nobody else would understand. A kind of comfort that didn't ask permission before settling in. That was the problem. Because every night, after laughing with her in the kitchen or handing her a clean dish towel or hearing her say my name from down the hall like it belonged in this space, I'd go back to my room and feel that old warning light come on. This is how it starts, I'd think. Not with fireworks. Not with some huge moment. With habits. with shared groceries and familiar footsteps and a person becoming part of your day so gradually you don't notice until the thought of losing it makes your chest go tight. And by then, of course, it already matters. The first time I heard his name, it didn't even come with a story. Mary was standing at the kitchen counter, phone face up beside her, cutting strawberries into a bowl like she was annoyed at the fruit personally. I came in for water, and she glanced at the screen when it lit up. Her hand stopped for maybe half a second. Then she flipped the phone over. I don't know why I noticed that. Maybe because by then I noticed everything about her. The way her mood changed by inches. The difference between her real smile and the one she used when she didn't want to explain herself. The fact that she always hummed under her breath when she was fine. And that morning the kitchen had been completely quiet. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, too fast. Then she looked at me and corrected it. "Mostly." I waited, but she just pushed the bowl toward me. "You can have some if you want." That was it. No dramatic reveal. No speech. Just one name on a screen I hadn't even fully seen, and a shift in the air that stayed there all day. A couple nights later I came home and found her sitting on the couch with one leg folded under her, staring at nothing while some show played unwatched in front of her. She didn't even notice me until I set my keys down. "You've been kidnapped mentally," I said. She blinked, then gave me a tired smile. "Sorry. Long day." I stood there for a second longer than I needed to. "Studio stuff?" She looked down at her hands. "Not exactly. That should have been my opening." A normal person probably would have sat down and asked one more question. I didn't. I nodded like I respected privacy, which was technically true and also a very convenient disguise for fear. "Got it," I said. "I'm gonna heat up leftovers." She looked like she wanted to say something else, then didn't. After that, the guy started existing in the apartment without ever being there. A text while we were eating. Her getting quiet out of nowhere. A short call taken in her room with the door mostly closed. Once, I passed by and heard her say, "No, that's not what I said," in that flat tone people use when they're trying very hard not to get dragged somewhere old and stupid. She never acted excited. That almost made it worse. If she'd been obviously into him again, maybe I could have been angry and dealt with it cleanly. But this was Messier. He felt like history with unfinished edges. And somehow that made me feel even less solid, because what exactly was I supposed to compete with? Not him, really. Time. Memory. Whatever version of herself had existed with him before I ever knew her. So I did what I always do when something starts to matter too much. I got polite. I stopped hovering in the kitchen when she cooked. Told myself I had work. Ate later. I started taking my coffee into my room instead of sitting at the table with her in the mornings. On Friday, when she asked if I still wanted to watch the terrible dating show we'd been making fun of for weeks, I said I was tired. She looked at me for a second. "You hate being tired. You usually fight through it out of spite." "I'm trying personal growth. That's not what this is." I gave her a small shrug and kept moving, which was cowardly enough that even I knew it in the moment. The apartment changed fast after that. Not in some huge visible way. Just little absences. The space between two mugs on the counter. A dinner made for one instead of two. Her door closing earlier. My room becoming a place I hid in instead of slept in. It lasted 4 days before she cornered me. Not literally. She was standing in the hallway with a towel over one shoulder because she'd just watered her plants. I tried to pass with my laundry basket, and she stepped slightly to the side but not enough. "Are you mad at me?" she asked. The question hit so directly I almost laughed. "No." "Then what is this?" "What is what?" She stared at me. "See that right there? That thing where you answer like customer service." "I do not answer like customer service." "You absolutely do." Her voice stayed calm, which somehow made it harder to dodge. "You've been disappearing all week, and you're doing it in this really careful way where technically nothing is wrong, but everything is weird." I looked down at the basket in my hands. Mostly because if I looked at her too long, I was going to say something real. "You don't have to manage me," she said, quieter now. "Just say it." I let out a breath. "I figured maybe you had other stuff going on." I do. The words landed harder than they should have. She saw that happen on my face. Of course she did. Okay, she said. Then let me be clear. My ex reached out. That's what's going on. There it was. Clean. No softening. I nodded once like this was useful information I could file away neatly. Got it. Her eyebrows pulled together. That's seriously all you have? I could feel myself retreating even while she stood right in front of me. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would be a fun start. I laughed once without humor. You want the truth? Fine. I don't exactly love hearing that some guy from your past suddenly has access to your attention again. Her expression changed, not to anger, to recognition. He's not present love, she said. He's unresolved history. Those are not the same thing. I swallowed and said nothing. She took one step closer. And you pulling away because you feel threatened does not make this easier. It just makes you harder to reach. That one stayed with me because it was too accurate. I wanted to tell her I wasn't trying to punish her. I was trying to protect whatever part of me still thought this apartment could stay simple if I acted early enough. But standing there with a laundry basket in my hands, I felt ridiculous. Too old to be this guarded. Too practiced at pretending distance was maturity. She moved aside then and let me pass. But before I did, she said, I'm not confused about who feels real in my life right now. I turned to look at her fully for the first time in that whole conversation. She held my gaze for a second, maybe two. Then she walked back toward the kitchen, leaving me in the hallway with my stupid folded shirts and a pulse I could suddenly feel everywhere. That night I stayed in my room anyway. Not because I didn't understand what she meant. Because I did. And that was worse. 2 days after that hallway conversation, the apartment had this strained quiet that made every normal sound feel too loud. Cabinet doors, the kettle, my phone buzzing on the table. Mary and I were still talking, but only in the functional ways people talk when they both know something larger is sitting in the room with them. Your package came. Thanks. I'm starting the dishwasher. Okay. It was miserable. The worst part was that nothing had actually broken. She was still there. I was still there. We were still moving around each other in the same familiar space. But now all the easy parts had edges. I kept thinking about what she'd said in the hallway. I'm not confused about who feels real in my life right now. A smarter man would have taken that sentence and done something useful with it. I reorganized the pantry. That evening I knocked on her door because I'd taken one of her mugs into my room by accident. It was the blue one with the tiny crack near the handle, the one she refused to throw out because, according to her, it still has a job. I stood there with the mug in one hand, already rehearsing some bland sentence in my head. No answer. I knocked again, softer. Mary. Still nothing. I tried the handle just enough to see that the door wasn't fully latched, and it opened an inch. I should have backed off. Instead, I heard this small, uneven sound from inside, and every thought in my head stopped. She was sitting on the floor beside her bed. At first, I only saw the shape of her, knees pulled up, one arm across them, head turned away. Then she looked up and I saw her face, and the whole moment changed. Not dramatic, not movie style, just real in the worst way. Her eyes were red, and she had that exhausted look people get when they've been trying not to fall apart for longer than they should have. I held up the mug like an idiot. I was just bringing this back. For 1 second I thought she might tell me she was fine. She was good at fine. Better than me, maybe. Instead she wiped at her face and let out a breath that sounded almost annoyed with herself. That's a terrible excuse to open a door. Yeah, I said quietly. It really is. I stayed where I was. Do you want me to go? She looked at me for a long time before answering. No. So I came in and sat down on the floor across from her, leaving space between us. Her room smelled faintly like clay and soap. There were sketches taped to the wall, a sweater half hanging off her desk chair, a drying bowl on top of a stack of art books. Everything looked normal except her. For a minute neither of us said anything. Then she pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes and said, I hate crying when somebody can see me. I can leave and come back in 10 minutes and act surprised. That got the smallest laugh out of her. It disappeared fast, but it was there. She lowered her hands. He called earlier. I nodded once. I don't even know why it hit me so hard today. She looked down at the carpet between us. Maybe because it wasn't really about him. Or not only him. I waited. That whole relationship, she said slowly. I got so good at adjusting. I was always trying to become easier to be with. Less intense, less complicated, less work. Just whatever version of me kept things smooth. She gave a short, tired smile. And the stupid part is I got really good at it. So good that sometimes I still do it without noticing. My chest tightened. She looked around her own room like she was seeing it from far away. Then work has been weird. I had a piece crack in the kiln this week, and then another one didn't come out the way I wanted. And I know that sounds small, but when your whole job is making things with your hands, it starts feeling personal fast. Like maybe there's something off in you that keeps showing up in what you make. That doesn't sound small, I said. Her eyes lifted to mine. No. She nodded, then looked away again. I think I'm just tired of feeling like I'm always shaping myself around other people and still never landing as an actual person. Ever felt like you were edited out of your own life? I want to hear your story below. There are moments when you know the safe response. I'm sorry. That sucks. You'll figure it out. All those polite little phrases that keep everything neat and untouched. I didn't want neat, so I told the truth. I know that feeling more than I want to. She went still. I sat with my forearms on my knees, looking down at my hands because saying real things is somehow easier when I'm not looking straight at the person hearing them. My last relationship didn't end in some huge disaster, which almost made it worse. I just kept accommodating and accommodating until one day there was almost nothing sharp or specific left about me in it. I was so focused on being easy to live with that I never stopped to ask whether I was actually being known. The room got very quiet. When it ended, I said, I told myself I'd learned something mature, that I'd be calmer next time, more careful. But really I just got scared and dressed it up as stability. Mary's face changed when I said that. Softened, maybe, or maybe it was just recognition again. That tracks, she said gently. I laughed once. Yeah, I know. And when my ex showed up again, she said, you disappeared because it mattered. I finally looked at her. Yes. The word sat between us, simple and unfixable. She drew in a breath, and some of the tension in her shoulders eased for the first time since I'd come in. Thank you for actually saying it. I'm not very good at actually saying things. I know. That should have stung. But the way she said it didn't. Felt more like being seen than judged. We stayed there on the floor talking until the light outside her window changed. About her work. About my habit of making myself useful when I don't know how to be open. About how both of us had somehow turned self-protection into personality. Nothing huge happened. No sudden perfect clarity. No dramatic move across the room. But something real shifted. At one point she leaned her head back against the side of the bed and looked at me with tired, honest eyes. We can't really go back after this, can we? I knew exactly what she meant. Back to jokes in the kitchen that pretended not to mean anything. Back to shared routines with all the truth cut out of them. No, I said, and even without touching her, I felt how close we were. Not roommate close, not almost. Something quieter and far more dangerous. Something that had finally said its own name. After that night in her room, nothing went back to normal. It also didn't immediately turn into anything simple. That was the strange part. We were warmer with each other, but also more careful. Like both of us understood we'd stepped onto ground that mattered and neither one wanted to be the first person to ruin it. She touched my arm more when she passed behind me in the kitchen. I stayed at the table when she made coffee instead of taking mine back to my room like a coward. We talked longer, looked at each other longer. The apartment felt fuller somehow, like the air had changed density. And still, I couldn't say the whole thing out loud. Not because I didn't know it, because I did. A few days later, she was out teaching an evening class. and I was at the kitchen table with my laptop open, trying to work. I got through maybe 3 emails before giving up. My attention kept drifting to the doorway of her room, to the plant she'd moved onto the sill because it needed more light, to the mug she'd left beside the sink that morning. So instead of working, I opened a blank document and started typing. I told myself it was just to get my head clear. Nothing dramatic. Just a place to put the thoughts that had been walking around inside me for weeks. That lasted about 2 sentences. What came out was the truth I'd been avoiding in every possible form. That the apartment had started feeling alive when she moved in. That I had begun measuring my days by small things that involved her without meaning to. Her voice from the other room. Her hand reaching past mine for the olive oil. The way she made ordinary evenings feel like they belonged to someone, not just happened near me. I wrote that I had spent so much time trying not to need anything that I almost missed the fact that I already needed this. Needed her. Not in some huge impossible way. In the real way. The daily way. The way that changes the shape of a place. I wrote that when I pulled away, it wasn't because she had done something wrong. It was because I knew exactly how much she mattered, and that scared me more than I wanted to admit. Then I heard the front door open. I reacted like I'd been caught doing something illegal. I stood up too fast, hit my knee on the table, swore under my breath, and went to help her with the bag she was carrying. We talked about her class. Someone had nearly ruined a beginner bowl by trying to fix it too much. She laughed while telling me about it, and I laughed too, pretending I wasn't thinking about the still open laptop 10 feet away. Later I went to shower, and when I came back out, she was sitting at the table. Not typing, not snooping, just sitting there, one hand resting near my computer, her expression unreadable in that quiet, steady way she had when she'd already decided something. I stopped in the hallway. She looked up at me. I wasn't trying to read your stuff. I nodded because I believed her instantly. It was open, she said. I saw enough. There are moments where you can still try to save yourself with denial. I could feel one sitting there, waiting for me like an old habit. I didn't take it. Okay, I said. She stood up slowly. I told him no. For a second I forgot what she meant. Then I didn't. He called yesterday, she said. I told him I'm not doing that again. Not the confusion, not the back and forth, not the version of me that keeps leaving herself out of the picture. I could feel my pulse in my throat. She took a step closer. And I'm done doing a half version of this too. This? I asked, though I knew. Her eyes stayed on mine. You, me. This apartment where we've both been acting like shared dinners and mornings and showing up for each other are somehow not already something real. I let out a breath I think I'd been holding for a month. She came closer again, until there was barely any space left between us. I don't want old history, she said. I want what's here. I want you to stop hiding inside being careful and actually let me have the truth. I looked at her and, for once, didn't try to make myself smaller or easier or safer. I'm in love with you, I said. It didn't come out polished. Came out rough and immediate and completely true. Something in her face softened at once. Yeah, she said quietly. I know. Me too. When I kissed her, it didn't feel like some wild new event. It felt like the apartment itself had been waiting for us to catch up. After that, the whole day changed shape. We stayed home. Ordered food we could have cooked ourselves. Sat too close on the couch. Talked and laughed and went quiet and looked at each other like we were both still adjusting to the fact that nothing around us was different and yet everything was. At one point she ended up half curled against me with her feet tucked under a blanket, and I remember looking at our mugs on the coffee table, her sketchbook by the arm of the couch, my charger stretched across the floor, and thinking that this was the first honest version of home I'd had in a long time. Not temporary, not careful, not arranged to avoid damage. Chosen. That evening we made dinner together without bumping around the truth. She handed me plates. I chopped vegetables while she stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders kept touching for no reason except neither of us moved away. The kitchen looked the same as it always had. Towels drying, plants on the sill, a bowl on the counter waiting to be glazed. But the apartment didn't feel like shared convenience anymore. Felt like a life. And for the first time in a while, I wasn't standing at the edge of it trying not to need it. I was in it with her.